So, hello and welcome to this Milwaukee Choristers conversation with an esteemed composer and colleague and friend and sister, Rosephanye Dunn Powell, who's considered to take a moment to visit with us and talk some about her music in general, but specifically to start recounting the wonderful composition that she wrote for us on commission, Softly the Night is Sleeping. But I want to tell you a little bit about Rosephanye. She is presently the Charles W. Barkley Endowed Professor and Professor of Voice at Auburn University, and is just a composer who's highly respected, very, very active, in high demand all over, and also a choral clinician amongst the many other hats that she wears. Rosephanye, hi and welcome.
So good to be here, and I am looking forward to our time and journey together. And I must say that Softly the Night is Sleeping was one of the most enjoyable experiences that I have had composing a choral work that is around, the Christmas time. And since we just finished with Christmas, I was listening to it again in preparation for our time together. So I'm looking forward to this discussion because this work is very special to me. And let me
Wow.
say thank you to you all for commissioning it, because I did not know the lyrics. And so that's the great thing about composing, is having these opportunities to familiarize myself with, poetry and different songs that people submit or lyrics to work with. So this was a great one.
Yeah. Well, I'm sitting here beaming as all will be able to see, because I'm well aware that the process of composition, and especially composition on commission, which this makes sense, is a job, it's a task, it's something that you agree to do, and to hear that this was meaningful to you and that you enjoyed doing this, just warms us all, because we enjoyed singing it and learning it and preparing it and trying to make it speak, and in our audiences, because our concerts run on consecutive nights. So our audiences really enjoyed it, and they responded so warmly to it. So you talked about the text. So what is it about that text that spoke to you?
You submitted a number of texts to me for me to consider, which was really great, because that gave me the freedom to see which of the poems spoke to me. And when I saw Softly the Night is Sleeping, I was drawn to it because of it. For me, it painted the picture in nature of the peacefulness and the poverty of Jesus. When one pictures that these shepherds are out in the fields, and they're the lowest class of their society, and here at the same time you have the baby Jesus being born in a manger, in a stable, in a trough. So we've got the King of Kings who's coming to the earth, and yet the announcement is not made to the rich and the kingly. The announcement is made to these shepherds who are out in the fields with their sheep, just as Jesus is in a stable with animals. And so I liked the juxtaposition of nature depicting what is going on with humanity. So you've got the night being soft and quiet, serene, picturesque. Jesus is the gentle baby, and yet he is a king. So as the song develops, it takes on a more majestic tone to depict who Jesus will be as an adult, the King of Kings, especially when he returns. So I guess what I was drawn to is it begins softly. Most people are sleeping, and yet the babe has been born. And these shepherds who are out in the fields, in the peacefulness of the night, watching over their sheep, become aware that this baby has been born. And so I begin the song with the breeze. I just imagine this breeze that just comes over the fields as the shepherds sit, thinking thoughts.
Yeah. And we do that effect as a choir. Yes. Yes.
Yes. So yes, the choir, the piano begins sounding the softly. So the piano is actually equal with the voice in expressing the music, in that it is the first voice to sound softly, while the voices imitate the sound of a wind, again, depicting the scene of that night. And then they go and, as a second voice, actually speak the words for the audience. Softly, the night is sleeping.
To me, another effect that it's presented in your wonderful piece is the transition from that to the exhilaration of the Gloria exclamation. And then what is just really amazing is how then that melds into this processional. And it's like we're all walking together. We're all walking to come, all going to the manger to come and to offer worship.
Yeah, so spot on, which is why I think, you all performed it so well. It begins serenely, quietly. They're just watching. Well, by the time it comes to the end, and and even in the verses, there's a drawing of the shepherds, and I picture the shepherds. They don't really know where they're going. All they're hearing is "Come." Mm-hmm. Come. And so at this point, you've got the percussion, the timpani. They're given this majestic processional, just as you said, it's celebratory. They are coming to worship this king. And when they arrive, he will just be a baby in a stable. And yet within their hearts and within the star that they see, the night itself, the angels singing, they are aware that though he is a baby, they are coming to worship their king. So it's and what I imagined as I had the percussion coming in and with what's going on with the piano, this music is actually carrying them. It's actually directing them to the stable.
Yes, yes. I've said it before, but we were so honored and so elated to be able to introduce that to the world. And if you don't mind my trite analogy here, it was like we're talking about the baby Jesus, but this composition was like a baby your baby that we were presenting to the world for the first time. And we felt a special measure of care and responsibility for that. Yeah.
Well, and I appreciate that, as a composer, you're at the mercy of the choir and the director who perform the work. And there will be times that I will be at a premiere or hear a work later, and I'm thinking, wow, that wasn't on the page. Okay, I appreciate creativity, but somewhere in the scope of what I put in the music, and we'll have major discussions about it, and then something strange or odd or peculiar will show up in the performance, and so I'm always nervous in attending premieres or the rehearsals for premieres, or actually hearing the work when it's performed, because I never know what I'm going to get. But it was so satisfying to hear just how ethereal a picture that the choir painted vocally, the sensitivity to the text, what the type of energy on the front end. It was more intimate in the vocal presentation, and as the song developed, vocally, the energy of the voices developed, and the colors, to me, of the voices changed. And to me, that it speaks well of you, your direction to guide them as to what's on the page and what are the intentions of the composer. I think I may have provided some notes on where my mind was in composing, but this was not one where sometimes the conductor will contact me and say, "Now, what did you mean in this measure? What did you mean?" I was so I found it so fulfilling to know that you were able to perceive my heart from what was on the page, because after I sent it, we did not connect again about the work. To me, that's a great, a sensitive director who has a connection to what's on the page. You asked me to compose the work, which means you had a sensitivity to who you thought I was as a composer, and then you were able to portray that to your choir. And I always tell people that the goal of the conductor is to bridge the intentions of the poet with the intentions of the composer, because our job is to bring to life musically and expressively what we hear in the poetry. So we have to make a connection to the poet and then to their poetry. But then the conductor has the difficult job, depending, or it may not be as difficult, dependent upon the giftedness and sensitivity of the conductor. And let me say as an aside, I always say that a good conductor is a lover of words, especially the written word, because you then have to look at those words and make your own connection, and then look at what's on the musical page and make a connection there. Then you give that to your choir. And if you've done a good job of giving that to your choir, and your choir connects to it, then they are able to communicate that to the audience. So it's connection from the poet to the composer to the conductor to the choir to the one who's to receive the ultimate gift, and that is the audience.
Yeah. I'm sitting here and thank you. I'm humbled. I'm deeply humbled. But when we first started down this particular direction, I was thinking, but it was easy, and by that I don't mean without challenge, but I mean in terms of, and you put it so well. It's literally a quote to be remembered that I received from your heart what your music was, and was able to convey that to the choir. And there are times, and you and I both know that there are times when you do compositions, some of them by composers who are alive, some of them by composers who have been dead for centuries, where it's very counterintuitive, you know, and you work to get there, but it's not easy to get there.
Right.
And your thought flowed, and I appreciate that. And on a personal level, it's growth for me from back when I weighed X number of pounds less, and I had a head full of black hair and all of those things, to this point. I had a composer once in my youth who had written something, and I was supposed to teach it to the choir. And the composer, and I could call, and if I call the person's name, we both would know, yes, we know that composer. The composer said to me essentially, so here I'm sending this, and as you look at it, as you study it, see if there's anything that you think that needs, you know, to be changed or whatever. And in my callow youth, I'm thinking, well, let's see, let me look for accidentals that were missed or whatever. And it took me some time before I understood that what this person was saying, I had an idea. And I did the best I could to put it on paper. Now you look at it and see if you can get my idea, if you can get it. And then does it speak to you? Is there something that might have made it speak better if I had done it? You know, and that's the level that we're trying, but it just makes it just incredibly rewarding to have a fine composer who puts that forth in a way that you receive that and your choir receives it and then the audience gets it. Oh, thank you so much. I do have another question for you in terms of the piece, and I do want to give our viewers an opportunity to learn more about you, even more broadly than just this piece that you've done. But you obviously accepted our commission, and I have, I think, enough of a glimpse behind the curtain of your life to know that you've got many, many, many irons in the fire at any given moment. Okay, that's what I think. I know you may say, no, that's not true, but I think that's true. Okay, so I'm curious. I know why we asked you, but I'm curious to know what made you say yes to us as opposed to, well, I've got too many commitments now. Perhaps at some point in the future, if you'll ask again, you know. So why? So what made this an opportunity that you wanted to pursue at our behest?
Well, you know, first, because, you know, I felt that your choir was one of seriousness of music and maturity. And what I mean by that is, yes, if I have less on my plate, I will be more inclined to, after listening to a group, say, okay, you know, I have the time, I can fit this in. But as you're saying, when the schedule is pretty full, I'm normally trying to work with choirs that I think will handle the music with care. Because it is very important to me. And sometimes I've worked with choirs where they just want to do a commission and they just do whatever they want to with the music. And I find that offensive.
And should.
You know, but then too, knowing who you are and my association with you, I thought it would be, I thought it would be fulfilling and gratifying, because I felt very confident that because of who you are as a person and, you know, who you are as a conductor and your group again, I just felt like this was going to be something that was going to have longevity. And once it is released, I feel very confident. And when you sent me, you know, the poetry, I really had a challenge deciding which one I would use, because everything you sent, they were really serious text. And when it comes to even Christmas for me, I have done my secular songs for groups, but when someone picks the types of text that you were picking, which are very much focused on the true message, that too, I knew that it would be a nice challenge to develop something that I thought would be interesting for your singers, but would also be attractive to those buying music. There's always this challenge when you're dealing with a commission and it's a fine group as yours. You want, that you want something that's interesting and has its challenges, but but when I know that the commissioning group wants it published, it's a balance between that which is difficult and that which the publisher will accept because they feel like they can sell it. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to allow the music to guide me, but also have challenges for your group at the same time, trying to keep it at a level that it can be sight read in reading sessions, that church directors can feel like, hey, this is a nice challenge for my group. So it was a mixture of all those things, the quality of your group as well as who you are. I knew that you would respect the work, and then that it would be a strong performance.
Well, thank you so much for that, and of course, I was excited to ask you, and I'll be honest, I asked you not having any idea what your answer would be, because I knew that you were very much in demand. And by the way, lest we forget to say it, you talked about the publisher getting your piece and feeling that it's something that will sell, and publishers, even the publishers of highest caliber, need to sell music. Okay. But I think that listeners, viewers ought to know that there are at least half a dozen publishers who publish your music, and that your music has wide distribution and sells a lot, and that it is heard in reading sessions all over. For choral directors, for people who don't know, when we talk about reading sessions, we're talking about choir directors getting together in a conference or in some kind of workshop or the other, having a chance to read new music and make decisions based on their reading through of the music, that, yeah, this is one I'd like for my choir, not so much. Yeah, and you populate those just all over the place. So people need to know, how widely dispersed your musical works are.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Now I should tell you this, without getting into a long story, that that my very first sort of cognizance of your music came through a colleague of mine in Milwaukee. She's deceased now, but her name was Ella J. Washington. And Ella Washington was the founding artistic director of the Heritage Chorale of Milwaukee, a choral group that was dedicated to the performance of music by African American composers, and more broadly, music that derived from the African diaspora. And they did a wonderful job with that. But I first heard any work of yours done, and it was a work that many people have heard as Rosephanye Powell's first work that I've heard perform. It was "The Word Was God." And of course, they did such a wonderful reading of this. And I was talking with her about the composer, and she said, yes, this is by Rosephanye Powell, and she is so fine. And she just went on and talked about you and what regard, and I'm like, yes, and Miss Ella, it was the kind of person that if she liked you, she liked you, and she liked your music immensely. And another piece that stands out for me, we actually got to do that in a Hal Leonard session, Choristers, Milwaukee Choristers. Some years ago, Arise Beloved. And oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I just love that. I love that piece, and other things, from your catalog, from your voluminous catalog. But those were sort of foundational for me, and so I thought Rosephanye Powell is the person that I'd like to ask to write this piece for us. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm so glad. Uh, I'm almost at the point of wanting to kind of pat myself on the back to say how smart I
Do,
was to
do,
ask.
do.
But thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing that. Um, I'm just curious about something more broadly about your composing, and I think other people, viewers, may be as well. Talk a little bit about how you work as a composer in general. Is there a kind of pattern to it, or is it really sort of multifarious, depending on a lot of the X, Y's, and Z's that are variables in your life?
Generally what I do is I start with the poetry. So, once I picked Softly the Night is Sleeping, I did what I typically do, and that is I will read the poetry over and over. And I might do this for days. And normally by the time I do that, I've got the poem memorized. And as I continue to read it, I start to picture in my mind whatever is going on in the poetry. And so at that point, normally the poetry starts to be a movie in my mind. Where am I going, and where is it going to end? What's the story that what's the storytelling of this poetry? And normally after I do that, I start to have emotional connections to the poetry. And so as I'm speaking it, whether I'm walking or driving, as that poetry comes, and becomes a part of me, I normally start then to hear a melody. And after that, and sometimes it's to the point where the poetry, I'll wake up when I turn over at night, the poem is going through my head. Well, once the melody starts to develop, I'm turning over, and it's annoying because I'm turning over and I'm waking, and there's that melody going over and over in my head. So, and I hate when it wakes me up at about 3 a.m. because then I've got to come upstairs and start composing. But the rhythm of the poetry generally is going to be the rhythm of the melody. And so if I'm saying softly, the night is sleeping, well, then that's softly, the night is sleeping, because that's the way the poetry was spoken. As I continued to read and then speak that poetry. After that, as I'm reading it, the harmonies normally come because as I'm reading, and there are emotions that start to develop, and the picture of the movie is in my mind. Well, at that point, I am seeing the mood, the landscape, the scenery, all of that determines what the tempo is going to be. And when you think of a text, softly the night is sleeping, you're not going to think of a tempo that's going to be up tempo. It's not going to be up tempo. The tempo was determined by, for me, the title. This was going to be a song that was slower. And again, the night is sleeping. That night is dark. It's not, unless it talked a lot about a star, the colors were going to be warm and dark harmonic colors because it's got to represent the night. And so as I'm imagining and I don't always put, vocal effects, but for me, I wanted to paint, before you all ever sang, I wanted to paint that breeze and just the trees maybe swaying a little bit, or the grass just, and it's quiet. I wanted the picture of quietness to be there. So that's really how I approach composing a song. And knowing that a song has to have sections, I normally try to get the poetry to take me where I'm going to go as far as sections. The shepherds watching. We've got that section watching. And so as we bring in once we brought in the timpani and they're watching, I'm painting a picture of them watching what is going on in the night. And then you find the song develops even more. I'm looking here at the score. When we get to hark, well, hark. Look, hear, listen, see. You notice that the music takes on a different quality because hark we're moving now to him being out of, not him just being a babe in the manger. They're saying hark, a king has been born. Well, then now the music takes on another idea as a new section, because I'm now starting the pomp and circumstance of this is the king. This is the ceremony. Hark, listen, see. Why the valley? To me, all of the hills and the mountains that the shepherds were taking on, they were starting to dance and celebrate this king. So they're starting to make their way to him, to where this baby is. And just as the Bible talks about, the rocks will cry out, all of the earth will bow down to him. That's what I saw in the pomp and circumstance. And so I think at this point, the shepherds are no longer sitting, they're standing. And they're feeling the exhilaration of the creation, the angels all speaking. And then when they start making their move to go find him. That's how it develops. I have to see the movie making its way. And at the very end, they're standing before him. So we've got this song that for me started with the quiet night and ends with them standing before the king. And get this, when the movie first happens, it's just focused in on the shepherds, each in whatever field or whatever valley they were in the as it becomes, the voices intertwine there, starting with the basses, come. Well, they're not only compelling people to come, it's also a percussive thought. Doom, boom, boom. Come. Well, that to me, that's the more meditative thought of the tenors. Come. So, and then the women start to tell you, come with the gladsome shepherds. So as the voices continue to grow there, if it were a movie, you would see them coming from different fields, different valleys, on the hills. All of a sudden, they're starting to come together and be a crowd that's coming to him. And then after that, it's saying, those of you who hear them, everybody. Well, then there are people who watch, well, where are these shepherds going? They all start to come. And that's why the voices, you get more energy, more activity of the voices, because it's showing that this group that started out as individuals are now becoming a collective crowd that's coming to worship him.